Good morning, boys and girls. I hope you enjoyed our lesson last week. I hope you remember the craft. I also hope you remember the story and what it was. Of course, last week we learned about Jesus and about how he told the disciples, even though they wanted to stop the children from coming to him, he told them to bring the children onto him, and that we should be like little children as well, trusting in Jesus completely and depending on him even during difficult times like what we're going through at the minute. But this week, boys and girls, we're going to remind ourselves to be thankful. There's a story in the Bible that reminds us to be thankful, and I'm sure some of you might find that quite difficult at the minute, but we're going to find out later on just how easy it is to thank God for what we have. We're also going to do a craft this week. It's a really easy craft, and again, below me in the link in YouTube there will be a link to the craft where you can print it out. All you have to do is fold the paper this week, maybe even glue it if you wish, and then you will have a great craft just like the one we did last week. So I'm going to read the Bible. First of all, I'm going to read from Luke chapter 17 verses 11 until 19. So that's Luke chapter 17 verses 11 to 19, and let's read it together. So if you can see it on the screen, read it out loud. Maybe mute me while I read it, or pause the video and read it before I read it to you. But here we are, Luke chapter 17 verses 11 to 19. Jesus was on his way to Jerusalem, travelling from Galilee to Samaria. He came into a small town. 10 men met him there. These men did not come close to Jesus because they all had leprosy. But they called to him, "Jesus, Master, please help us." When Jesus saw the men, he said, "Go and show yourselves to the priests." While the 10 men were going, they were healed. When one of them saw that he was healed, he went back to Jesus. He praised God in a loud voice. Then he bowed down at Jesus' feet and thanked him. This man was a Samaritan. Jesus asked, 10 men were healed. Where are the other 9? Is this Samaritan the only one who came back to thank God? Then Jesus said to him, Stand up and go on your way. You were healed because you believed. Now there are 2 questions, boys and girls, I have right away just after reading that. I want to know 2 things. I want to know, what is leprosy? And I want to know, what is a Samaritan? What is leprosy and what is a Samaritan? Because I didn't understand exactly what those were. Well, boys and girls, leprosy back in Jesus' time was a deadly disease. You would get boils on your skin, big spots. And not only that, but you would get a big rash as well. And eventually, boys and girls, your hands and your fingers and your feet and your toes could all contort. They could all go into strange shapes, and it would be really, really painful. Not only that, boys and girls, but the disease was contagious. It could spread easily, and so if you had leprosy, you had to leave your mum and your dad, all your family, all your friends, and you had to go and live away from the city, away from the town, away from houses, all by yourself or with people who had leprosy as well. Nowadays there's nothing to be afraid of. That disease there is a cure for that disease, but back in Jesus' day it was an awful, awful disease, and you were always alone if you had it. I also want to know, if you remember, what exactly was a Samaritan? Well, a Samaritan was someone who believed something different than what Jesus believed. Jesus was a Jew, and the Samaritans believed that the Jews were wrong. And obviously then the Jews believed that the Samaritans were wrong, and so they didn't like each other at all. In fact, they were almost enemies. If you listened in on Sunday morning to the sermon that Paul brought us, you would have learned of the Good Samaritan. Well, this person who came back and thanked Jesus was a Samaritan as well, but he shouldn't have liked Jesus. Anyway, back to our story. Because in our story we find that there are 10 people with leprosy. And the Bible tells us that they don't come close to Jesus just in case he got leprosy, but instead they shout to him and ask him for help. And so Jesus says, why don't you go to the priest? Isn't that a strange thing to say? Because these people called out to Jesus because they knew that he could help them. Surely they would have went to the priest beforehand if they thought he could help them. But on their way to the priest, because they did what Jesus told them, they were healed right on their way to the priest. And so Jesus knew that when they got to the priest would allow them back into the town, back into the village, back into the city to see their friends and their family. You know, boys and girls, on their way to the priest, they got healed. And I'm sure, boys and girls, many of you, if you had experienced something like this, would run back to Jesus and thank him for what he did. But you know what, boys and girls, the Bible tells us, Luke writes in chapter 17, that only one person came back. Only one person came back and thanked Jesus for what he had done. And the Bible reminds us that that person was a Samaritan. Most likely, that was the least person that people thought would come back and thank Jesus. The Samaritans were not supposed to like Jesus. They were supposed to hate him. And yet, out of the 10 people, only one came back, and that was supposed to be the person who didn't like Jesus. And that's why Jesus asks, why didn't anyone else come back? See, Jesus is teaching us that it's very important to be thankful, to thank Jesus and to thank God for what we have today. So why not, after this video, or you can pause it now, just press pause and think of 5 things that you are thankful for today. If you're watching this video, if you're able to see it, then that means you either have a phone, a laptop, or a tablet that you're able to watch this video on. Maybe you're watching it in your house as well, and that's something to be thankful for. Even in difficult times, even whenever we're maybe not able to go to school or go to the clubs that we like, there are things to be thankful for. You've listened up so well, and so it's time for our craft. As I said before, this week's craft is a wee bit easier. I will have the links below that you can download the instructions and download the page as well. Now you'll notice this page isn't coloured in as well as it was last week. That's because Rebecca didn't help me. But you can see there are a few things on this page. You can see that there is Jesus, there is 1 leper, there is 2 leper, and there are lots of other ones as well. You'll see that there are lines as well along the page. There's one here, here, and here. And the best way I found to do it was to fold the page at those points. And I'll show you what you should have at the end. This week you do have the instructions, so I don't have to explain it that much. Hopefully your mum and dad will be able to help you. And so, boys and girls, once you have your folds in place, you will see that there's Jesus. And here are the 10 lepers who have gone away and been healed. But if you fold it the other way, boys and girls, you will see that there are still the lepers running away from Jesus, not coming back to thank him. But there is one who came back and thanked him. That will remind you, boys and girls, that we should always be thankful to Jesus and to God for what he has given us. I hope you've listened well, and thank you so much.